So in this video, I'm going to be going over the post I put on my Instagram stories, raising awareness about domestic violence. And I have Juuna'e here with me to help me read the message between me and Pastor Reverend Chris, who responded to this story. So first, we're going to show you the screenshot of it and read through it. This is from the National Domestic Violence Hotline's Instagram page. So it says the 5 types of abuse in an abusive relationship. Physical abuse, non-accidental use of force that results in bodily injury, pain, or impairment. Emotional abuse may include verbal aggression, intimidation, manipulation, and humiliation. Sexual abuse, non-consensual sexual interaction through coercion, guilt, or force. Financial abuse, when one partner has control over the other partner's access to economic resources. And digital abuse, when one partner uses technology to bully, harass, stalk, or intimidate a partner. And then it shows you can learn more at the website. Juuna'e is going to be reading Reverend Chris's parts of the DM.
Okay, so Rev Chris responded to that post saying, "You are guilty of all of those. You physically hit him. He's never touched you. You're accusing him of domestic violence while still spending his money. You have no shame. You're using social media to intimidate, act like an adult. You were with Chris since 2015. You knew who you were marrying for better or for worse. You became a member at RCLA and were told what we believe and what would happen if you went wayward and how we defined that, and you signed on the dotted line. Accept responsibility for your own actions. Despite your lamentable behavior, I still love you. We still love you and pray you just go your separate way if we're everything you're accusing us of being."
And this is my response. I flailed my arms at Chris because he was physically holding me down from leaving the home. When someone physically keeps you from getting away from them, that is holding someone against their will. You are not informed on abuse at all. And if you research from the experts on which you and Rev Rudy claimed you weren't experts, you would know that reactive abuse is a legitimate occurrence. Research it. I've owned up to that moment and never denied flailing my arms at him so that I can get away. He is 10 times stronger than me. You are horrifically ill-informed. I'm gathering my case and evidence that you have lied, omitted facts, and now you are accusing me of having no shame. Once my case is ready, we can have a meeting with all the leaders of RCLA if you are willing. So I kind of want to pause and talk about this part. First, like the fact that he said I was guilty of all of the things in the previous post. It's like, you're falsely accusing me again. Right? Not only did you falsely accuse me in the excommunication speech, but now you're falsely accusing me of being physically abusive, emotionally abusive, sexually abusive, financially abusive, and digitally abusive. And he has yet taken accountability for that to this day.
Right. And I guess what I would add to that is the fact that I feel like that's a really extreme, uncalled for and extreme response for someone that he knows has been justifiably deemed as being abused. You know what I mean? Just from the therapist, messages. And it's like, this was something that he was aware of, that you were the one being abused. So I feel like to speak to someone, in this way of saying you're guilty of all of these things, knowing that you're speaking to the victim right now. You know what I mean? Even if he thought it was both ways, which you're clearly saying it wasn't. But even if he thought that, I feel like you still don't speak to someone like that. You know that
Right.
this is already understood, or it's already understood that you are and have been a victim, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I think that was just uncalled for.
Right. And we'll get to that in this presentation. Like, there is evidence that Reverend Chris knew I was in an abusive marriage, because we have emails from our therapist who state that I'm in an abusive marriage, that I'm being abused.
Right.
But also, like, saying I have no shame, like, highlighting the fact that I've been with Chris since 2015. It's actually 2016. But that's the thing about covert abuse, emotional abuse. You don't see it until over time, right? It could take years. There's a lot of women in my support group who've been married for 30 plus years, and they finally, get the resources they need to see what has been happening to them. And so basically telling me, like, I knew I was marrying an abuser, and like, and that it's my responsibility, like, you made your bed, lay in it, kind of. That's what it sounds like, right? Like,
yeah, that's exactly what it seems like he was communicating. Like you knew what this was about, so now that you're in it, why are you complaining?
right.
It's like, it doesn't matter, you know, especially like victims of abuse, like they, like you just said, like a lot of times they don't know that that's what it is. They don't see the early signs. And, you know, I feel like that's really unloving to expect everyone to have maybe that awareness of, maybe you should have recognized that he was abusive from the jump and not got involved or married the person. And it's like, well, what if I didn't see it? Now I'm just supposed to lay in it and be in it. Like, that's not right, you know?
Right. So this situation where Rev Chris is saying, like, Chris has never touched you, that I'm the one that hit him, he's referring to a situation that, he was actually, Rev Rudy was counseling us through this at the time. And me and Chris were having an argument, and I needed to walk away. I needed to take a walk and get some space, and he wouldn't let me leave. He was holding me back from the door. And it was actually one of the first times I realized I was being psychologically, like, manipulated, right? It was like when I really started to realize what was happening, and I needed to get out, because I felt like my mind was being held back, as weird as that sounds, but that's how it feels, and now you're physically holding me back, like, I was in fight or flight mode. And I don't even know if I want to talk about this. I might not even put this in here, because I feel like that's just opening another can of worms.
Like telling the story you just told?
Yeah.
How so? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, it says it already. Like, I fled my arms at him. I was trying to get away. No.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like what makes you feel like you don't want to incorporate it? Like, what is that?
Because I feel like it's complicated. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when it happened, he had a scratch on his arm, right? So he had a physical mark from me because of my nails. And I felt bad, like, I was just like, oh my God, I hurt you, and I took responsibility for that. And that's what I meant when I said it here. I was like, I never denied that moment. I took responsibility for it. I hate, when I told Rev Rudy, I was like, I hate that I did that, but what's complicated about it is it's frustrating because it's like, see, you're the abuser. And that's like the nature of it. Like they flip how you reacted instead of focusing on what they were doing in the first place, which was holding you back from leaving. And I just feel like it's complicated to unpack that.
It is if I think it is if you're already dealing with someone that does not want to understand. You know what I mean? Because I think that
Mm-hmm.
you can literally fill in the blank with any type of scenario. You know what I mean? Like where someone is the abuser or the attacker, and there's the victim and the person that's defending themselves. Everyone's familiar with those kind of scenarios, whether it's a robbery or a break-in into a home or whatever. It's like, if someone defends themselves and they put a scratch or a bullet in this person's head, from something as small as a scratch to a bullet or a stab or a black eye, whatever it is, if you just look at the markings and you only decide to take that one little piece of information out of context, because we do that with scripture. You take something out of context, you can make it say whatever the heck you want it to say. You know what I mean? But it's like, if you put it in context, and I think with, the entire case and all the evidence from the therapist, and like the therapist didn't say Mel and Chris both have abusive tendencies. Like there's no evidence on this side for you to be this kind of a person. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's almost out of your character. And then when you put it in context of not just the whole thing combined, but in context of that actual moment, it's like, oh, okay, what happened before the scratch? It's like, oh, she was trying to leave. What happened before that? Or what happened after that? Or whatever. It's like you piece the story together and the evidence, and it's like, oh, she was trying to leave and exit. He was trying to hold her back. She was trying to break away from him. It's clear. If someone wants to just look at this little scratch out of context, then they don't want to understand anyway. Is basically so I feel like that's unfair to you to feel like afraid, you know what I mean, that this scratch or this little piece of evidence, just because it looks like it can mean something, it's almost like, and I get it, like you're almost walking on eggshells, because it's like you're afraid that people will respond that way by not taking the time to look at everything in its context. And I'm like, you shouldn't have to fear that. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't scratch him. It wasn't ill-willed, like didn't intentionally come at him and try to jack him up. Like, that's not what happened, and nothing indicates that that's who you are. It actually, all the evidence is on the other side. So I feel like if you want to, whether you want to incorporate that or not, I think like, I get it, but I'm like it just sucks that you feel like that, I definitely understand, but I'm like, they don't want to understand anyway then. If people are out of context, like that's trash. So.
Well, and that's like why I brought up reactive abuse. Which again, like if people decide to do their own research on what reactive abuse is, it's like when there is intentional mind games and manipulation and pushing someone to a point, that it's very common that happens. And then the abuser then goes, see, look, like she's tripping, like it's her. And that's actually what happened in the moment. He picked up the phone and he called Rev Rudy, and Rev Rudy was with Elder Steve and some other couple. They were like out at dinner, and so they could hear it over the phone, right? And Chris is saying, I've never seen her like this before. I don't know what's going on, and he's like making it seem like I'm having this like episode, but it's just like, it's very calculated. Very calculated.
Well, I think maybe whether you want to, include that or not, the fact that it's in the text message, like the fact that it comes up with the flailing your arms and you guys kind of address it, like I think viewers will want to know like happened? Like, what was that about? So I think whether you go into detail and explain it like you already did, or if you just say, if you guys aren't familiar with reactive abuse, like there's a link in the description that lets you know like what reactive abuse is, and that's what happened there, and then move on.
So yeah, just to go back to that, for Rev Chris to say that he's never touched me, it's like holding me against my will. That's holding
Right.
me against my will, right? So,
Right.
but you're focusing on the fact that I hit him to get away from him holding me against my will.
Yeah.
You're skipping steps. Like,
Right.
why did I feel like I needed to break free? Because I was being held against my will.
Exactly.
And that's why that situation went down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My support group leader, Natalie, in Flying Free, she always gives a scenario where if you see a cat in the corner, someone's throwing cans at a cat, and the cat's backed up in a corner and it's throwing cans at it, and the cat raises its back and it starts to hiss. Are you gonna call that cat abusive?
Or aggressive, or like aggressive.
It's
Like,
getting
yeah.
cans thrown at it,
Exactly.
It's trying to protect itself, it's trying to get a little bit bigger, like we're designed to do that too. Like God designed us to get that adrenaline and to get out, to try to get free. So like, you're not going to call a cat getting cans thrown at it abusive when it's just trying to get out of the situation.
Exactly. And I feel like everybody can relate to that. Like,
right.
Everyone it could be a spider. You know what I mean? It's like, you might not be this I want all bugs dead type of person where you're just trying to annihilate every creature, but it's like, let a spider be crawling on you. You're gonna be in self-defense and might smash it, and it's like, whoa, you're aggressive. No, it was a spider on my neck or on my shirt. Like, it's like, I don't know. And that's kind of a petty little example, but I just feel like everyone knows what self-defense is, and anyone would respond in that way. You know what I mean? Like, if they sensed any type of threat, I don't think anyone's gonna not understand that point, especially with that cat example. Like, I think that's a really good illustration of it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue reading the
Pick back up.
Yeah.
All right, so Rev Chris continued to say, interesting. You've never told us he physically held you down, and now you're accusing us of omitting info. Sounds like you're either omitting info yourself or adding salsa to the taco. I really hope Chris gets free from your abuse. Where's the police report, Meli? This man was keeping you hostage physically, but you didn't call the cops?
There's so much I want to say here. Like,
yeah.
Again, it goes back to the lack of education of abuse on Rev Chris's part, because if you knew even just the basics of abuse, like, that it takes an average 7 times for someone that's being abused to leave. It's not easy to just get up and leave, and it's not always easy to just call the cops. Like, there's everybody's situation is different and unique, and different levels of danger involved.
Right.
And at the time of this event where Chris was holding me back from leaving my own house, I didn't have all the knowledge that I have now about abuse. Right. So it didn't even occur to me to call the cops, but even I just needed to get some space, like go take a walk.
Right.
But just like, just the tone here, his tone, and like, again, just blaming me. I don't see any like holding my husband accountable. Like, I wonder if he's ever talked to my husband like this. I've never seen him talk to my husband like this.
Right. Yeah.
And like, now I'm the abuser in his eyes.
Right. Yeah. It seems like there's definitely like a bias, and we've had that conversation before. Like, it just seems like there's a bias of like, yeah, Chris might have done some things, but Mel, you know, it's like, you're the one that we're gonna get on, and kind of like, you know, like I don't know. I don't see like the love or the empathy in your guys' situation, because I mean, I feel like there's like underlying tones, like you said, the whole tone of this, it wasn't soft and cautious, knowing that they're dealing with someone who is a victim. It's like they're not convinced that you are a victim, which clearly from the part where he says, I really hope Chris gets free from your abuse. That I think kind of said it in itself, you know, like they're not, or I should say Rev Chris is not convinced that he's not taking it serious. He's not convinced that you're genuinely or truly being abused, and that Chris is the one. So it honestly makes sense, the tone, if it was flipped the other way around. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like in his mind, it's opposite, which doesn't make any sense, especially with you being a female. You know, it's like, even though I know there is female abuse with men, but that's not the case anyway. You know what I mean? But yeah, it seems backwards for sure.
And I think too, it goes back to, again, lack of education on what abuse is, right? And he has expressed, even when we had the meeting face to face with everybody, that like, you think abuse is just physical, right? And so from this DM thread, he's like, no, you're the abuser because you actually hit him, and you know, so you're the abuser, right? But it's like, no, you are not educated and informed. And that's not me saying like you're not educated. It's like, no, you just don't know what you're talking about, and that's dangerous when you don't know what you're talking about. And everything you said to this point has been very hurtful, and it's like, I've had time to process it since then, so I'm not like super tripping right now as I'm reading it. You know, but when it came to me, it was very triggering, and my body was shaking, like this is not okay.
Yeah, not at
all. And I feel like, you know, you could either say, you know, I'm sorry, like I'm not informed, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry that I said these things. But to this point, like, he still hasn't done that, which means he doesn't believe in the true definition of abuse.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like not just an apology. I think that is definitely something that, you know, would be nice, you know, but I think what strikes me is the fact that it was said in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's to apologize for something, but it's almost a whole nother thing to like, I don't know. It's like, especially just, I would say the role, you know, like the role that Rev Chris is in, you know, when dealing with people within the church, and, you know, and it's
as like a leader.
Yeah. And then
as a shepherd.
A leader, a shepherd, to come at someone like this. And it's not, it felt so cold and so like you were the enemy, you know. It's almost like, how did it get that extreme? Like, if anything, it should have been softer, because he was also aware of, he's been a part of the process of what y'all have been going through. Like, it's not like he didn't know anything to where he just maybe just heard about the scratch and then just came like this, which I think would still be inappropriate. But it's like, you've had information, like, you know what's going on. So then to come with that tone is just adding to the inappropriateness, you know? So I just question like what's really on his mind, you know what I mean? And in his heart to have came at you like that, you know?
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna continue reading.
Okay.
So then I responded, no, I did tell Rudy that information because he was the one counseling us at that time. You're being disrespectful and deflecting because you know I have proof against you. Why are you doing this? You are entitled to have your own opinion. However, yet again, you are speaking falsely. I am not using social media to intimidate or bully my spouse. If you have evidence of that, by all means, present it. I'm simply using my right as a human being to use my voice via social media to defend myself and the truth of the situation. And if that intimidates you, I don't know what to tell you. I don't even follow you anymore, but you're constantly looking at my stories. So again, false accusations. And the truth of the matter is that you made false public statements about me on Facebook Live, sir. I have every right to respond to that publicly. Now you're mocking me and shaming me for not calling the cops. Again, if you're willing to have a leaders meeting with me and my witnesses with the evidence, and you can reckon with that evidence, and everyone else who is present may do so as well, I'm willing to do that. Would you be willing?
His response was, anytime, and we'll record it to make sure you're not misunderstood.
Also, I have text message evidence from Chris that he was willing to continue to support me. I'm sorry to say this, sir, but you have been manipulated by a masterful manipulator named Chris Corlina. Correction, support me financially. And you don't have the full story on that. So to shame me for spending his money is out of line. And perfect, I'm glad we agree on recording it. I'll be bringing my evidence about the finances too.
I know he was willing to support you. My shock is that you'd accept.
So, okay, I want to talk about this.
Okay.
So, you know, since I've been separated, after I separated, I finally, you know, got a job after being unemployed for over a year. And so I've been using my own money, you know, but we do have a joint account. And I would only use it when I really needed to use it. But despite that, like I'm still married, you know what I'm saying? Like we have a joint account. There's no reason for me to be shamed for using my joint account with my husband. So I felt like that was completely out of line.
Right.
For him to shame me for that. And I think that's probably my husband, Chris, in his ear saying, oh, she's still spending my money, you know, but she's not responding to me.
Right.
It's just like, it's kind of petty at this point. I feel like it's just a petty, like another reason to shame me. I feel like the intention is to shame me.
Right.
And to be shocked that I would accept his support. I mean, that's like one of the things that I feel like my husband, Chris, would manipulate me with. He'd be like, you know, I'm willing to support you, you know, whatever you need financially, like, you know, I'm here to help you. But now he took it away. So it's like,
Right.
did you ever really mean that?
So
Right.
he's coming at you now by saying, my shock is that you'd accept. It's almost like, what's the shock? You know,
Right.
like, I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I think like that statement.
I think the point perhaps he was trying to make was like, oh, if he's an abuser, why are you using his money? Which is a weird argument, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, no, it is, especially because you know, I don't know if this is going to be in the video or not, kind of just talking it real quick, but I feel
No.
like especially because, um, oh, you guys, like you just said, you guys had a joint account, you guys were still married, you were setting boundaries that were suggested by the therapist, like you were still in a space of, I didn't flare a divorce paper in his face. Like, you know, I didn't say like, I feel like I'm being abused, I'm out. Like, you know what I mean? Like you've been going to therapy, trying to get help, you know, from Rev Chris and Rudy. And, you know, you've been like, oh, I'm going to set boundaries. Like the fact that you even had the expectation for Chris to respect those boundaries means he's still in the ring. You know what I mean? Like it's still, there's still hope. So I feel like for him to say, I'm shocked that you'd accept is just kind of like, what did you think this was? Like, I wasn't just trying to throw Chris under the bus by saying, oh, he's an abuser and I'm gone, I'm done, and I don't want to try to fix it at all. It's like you've been showing that you've been trying to fix it. So it's like you didn't abandon your marriage. So it would make, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like it makes sense that you would still try to keep some type of tie. It's like we have a joint account, like we didn't just kick each other to the curb and we're just completely separate now. It's like, you know, like you've been trying to work it out, you know, but being
Right.
honest with yourself on whether or not it's actually working out, you know, but you've at least been trying to. So I feel like it's just strange that, I mean, he's making it seem like you were just like in this place of I'm being abused, I am just so done, I'm gone. And then it's like, oh, if you're completely done and you're gone, you know, like you haven't been trying to work nothing out or fix anything and you just left, but then you're still trying to use his money. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
That's,
that's
yeah.
completely different. Like you didn't do that. Like you even said you guys have been separated. Like
And there was clear communication of what those boundaries were and
exactly.
expectations were. And there weren't any boundaries or expectations on that joint account. In fact, Chris clearly said that, you know, whatever you need, don't ever feel like you can't use it, you know.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so that just makes no sense to me. Just us sitting here just trying to like talk it out. It doesn't make sense. And I think it's because it's like Rev Chris has resolved in his mind, like you abandoned the marriage.
Right.
Like you said, and it's like, where did you get that from?
Right.
You got that from my husband, Chris, who didn't tell you the truth. That
Exactly.
I communicated to him, I need a couple more months. Let me get back to you when I'm ready. He didn't
Right.
respect that. He kept texting me
Right.
and I didn't respond because he didn't respect what I asked of him to do. So
Right.
because I'm not responding to his text messages, then that means you can't use my money anymore. Oh, you don't want to respond to my text
Right.
messages? How dare you use my money?
Exactly.
That's manipulation, that's power and control. That's what abusers do. They're trying to get your power over you back. So, oh, you don't want to respond when I want you to respond? Let me take
Exactly.
away the bank account from you. You can respond now.
Exactly.
That's what's happening here.
Right.
That's what's happening here. Um, but that's not being called out. I'm being called the abuser for not responding.
Right.
That makes sense.
Not at all.
So after he says, it's my shock that you'd accept, I said, you judged without my side of the story, sir. That's out of line.
LOL. I begged you to give me your side. I have all of our texts and emails. We're good. Trust me. You're a liar and you know it.
And just because someone doesn't give you the side of the story doesn't give you the free pass to condemn them and make stuff up. Again, if you researched and took seriously the info I sent you, especially from our therapist, you would know how hard it is to keep going to someone for help and they keep putting them off. And okay, Rev Chris, I'm open to hearing what you're accusing me of lying about when we meet in person.
He said, I defended you like an idiot, made Chris drop out of seminary and everything else you asked me to do. I read your emails and confronted Chris about manipulating you, and he confessed and submitted to discipline. All of this is recorded.
That's the problem. He didn't actually repent. He continued his abuse. People can jump through hoops, but I'm the one who lived with him on a daily basis. Your problem is you, I quote, said, don't want to believe Chris is that guy, and that's the problem.
You don't stop answering to messages from the pastors Christ put over you. We explained to you how we view church membership and that you'd be excommunicated from us if you broke that covenant. You were even told beforehand and you didn't respond. Again, act like the mature woman I know you are.
Repenting is changed behavior, patterns of behavior. I gave him plenty of chances to change and he kept abusing me, so I got to safety. God knows the truth. This is ugly, dude. Interesting.
That part where Rev Chris said, we explained to you how we view church membership and that you'd be excommunicated from us if you broke that covenant. That's crazy. Like, they're saying this is how we view church membership and you can be excommunicated from us. Put it in context, if you stop answering the messages from the pastors Christ put over you. Like, that's really like,
yeah,
why they excommunicated you. Like it's literally in this whole conversation, like them feeling like that, as well as clearly them thinking you're the abuser and not Chris. Like, which makes sense on why they accused you of what they accused you of, you know?
right. And yeah, that's important to highlight, like how he's just skipped over all of that. Like when I said, hey, his behavior didn't change.
Exactly.
I'm trying to tell you, it doesn't matter if you told him to drop out of seminary.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if he said he's submitted to your discipline. I don't even know what that looked like. I don't know what kind of plan you guys had. You guys didn't inform me on that plan. And
right.
At the end of the day, I'm the one that gets to say if he's changed or not. And I'm telling you, I'm the one, like I said, I'm the one that's going home to him every day. He's not changing. Right. Where's your response to that? He skipped over that. He doesn't want to face that. He's going, you shouldn't have ignored us.
He jumped straight to that. Yeah.
Right? Like what I'm going through doesn't matter to him. What Chris does to me, it doesn't matter. It's just like, oh, put that aside. Let's talk about what I want to talk about. Right?
Yeah. And that's why I felt like there's such a bias, because it goes back to the tone that we were just talking about earlier, because he's saying, I defended you
like an idiot.
And then to say, dang, like I made Chris drop out of seminary. Look what you made me do.
Right.
You know, it's like you made me get Chris to drop out of seminary. And we did everything that you asked us to do. You know, like I read your emails and confronted Chris about manipulating. Okay. Yeah. And then when you do explain like everything, you know, like about how he didn't change and stuff like that, it's like it gets completely ignored. So I feel like it is just like this biased, I don't know. It is.
Yeah.
All right. So Rev Chris continues to say, you're a liar. I suggested you separating, not you.
Thank you for saying that.
I suggested you leave and live somewhere else. I have the text.
I got to go back to work, but if you write more, I'll get back to you.
You didn't even want to leave, so how were you in danger? That right there.
What?
I just feel like that is like what you were saying earlier, very uninformed, very ignorant, literally meaning just to not know. I feel like that word, so like, you know, used as a bad thing, but yeah, like when it comes to abuse, because I mean, think about that with anyone, like abuse is a thing that everyone talks about. It's like, are all these women just dumb? It's like, no, it's a real thing. Like from people's upbringings and how they get in their situations that they get in, and like come across an abusive relationship. Like, it happens. So it's like, for someone to say, well, you didn't even want to leave, which is a huge part and a huge thing that happens in abusive relationships, where the victim is not leaving, it's like, that's kind of normal. It's not that simple for him to say, like, how were you in danger? Like, for him to link, like, how were you in danger if you didn't even want to leave? Like, that's a weird correlation. It's like, so you're saying because the person did not leave, that means danger therefore did not exist.
Right.
Like, what? That doesn't correlate, like, at all.
That's leaning on your own understanding, right?
Right.
And I think that's what's happening. It's like, oh, if this is not going the way I think it should go, then it doesn't exist, or you're making it up. Right. And again, it's like every situation is different, and the level of danger is different for each case. For me, even in my situation where it was heavily emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, it's like, even with that, you can't just get up and leave.
Right.
Like, and I've said that to Rev Chris, like, it's not that simple.
Right.
I was unemployed at the time too, right? And you're not thinking about me at all. You're not putting yourself in my shoes and being like, oh, she should have just left then. It's like
it's really that simple.
Right. First of all, you don't think I thought about you guys are going to say I abandoned my marriage if I just got up and left and said nothing?
If you would, yeah. If you, I mean, you're absolutely right. Yes.
There's so many things you're worried about, and you're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to be safe while you're doing it. And it's just like, this is so out of line and so...
Right.
But I did say thank you for saying that, because when he presented his excommunication speech about me, he presented it as if they had no idea that we had this agreement that I was separating. So I was happy that he suggested separating, because I think that's a very important part of, this whole thing, because he presented it as if I did just get up and leave without saying a word. But this is the beginning of the proof that he didn't know I was leaving.
Yeah. He said, I suggested you leave and live somewhere else. I have the text. Yeah. Which,
I know right now, Rev Chris, you feel like an idiot for defending me, but there was a moment in time where you saw, and you saw what was happening, and you were starting to help me. And somewhere along the line, you got manipulated to no longer believe me. Again, like, I really feel like this video is important to show you the tone that this shepherd had with me and has continued to have with me over such a delicate situation. This is not loving. In his excommunication speech, he said, we're supposed to restore those who go astray in gentleness. This isn't gentle. He started off the DM as, I still love you, we still love you. This is not love. You can't treat somebody this way and say, I love you. That's not love. You can say it's love all day. That's not love.